There was a recent study that was published in the academic journal PLOS Genetics, I think, just a couple of years ago, that actually it's one of the most comprehensive surveys of genetic variation, nuclear genetic variation across the world. And when you look at the data from North and South America, it's clear that the majority of those populations have mixed Asian European ancestry. Although there is an interesting bit of data that probably only an LDS scientist would pick up, which shows for the Mayan people and maybe one or two other cultures close geographically to the Yucatan area, there's actually a nice infusion of Middle Eastern, what they call Middle Eastern genotypes in those populations.
This is Hosea 1:10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, Ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ye are the sons of the living God. Kahala Yahweh Bashem Yashai, Bashem Rakokwadash, which are the true Hebrew names of the Most High Father, Yahweh, which is Hebrew for He is, and His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, which is Hebrew for He is salvation, He delivers. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David, reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the tribe of Zebulon and how this pretty much covers the Central American Latinos from Panama, Guatemala, Salvadorians, Nicaragua, Honduras, basically all in that center area. Okay, because why do I say that? Well, when you go back to the early native Indian culture in that area, that is where the Mayan Empire rose out of. Now, if we go to the Bible timeline, the Bible timeline tells us that the Mayan Empire came into be around 300 BC and lasted until about 1400 AD. It basically was established 300 years after the Northern Kingdom being the Latinos and Native American Indians, were expelled from the Northern Kingdom of Israel, When you go back to the Bible timeline, you'll go back and you'll see, here we go. In 722 BC, basically a little over 300 or 400 years prior, the Assyrians came and conquered the Northern Kingdom because the Lord allowed it to, because we, the Latinos and Native American Indians, we had gone off and we started to worship other gods. And this was our punishment, that we would be expelled from the land. Now, we stayed captive in Assyria for about 100 years until the Babylonians came and eventually destroyed and conquered Assyria. And this pretty much freed the Northern Kingdom Israelites within the Assyrian Empire. Now, by this time, according to the records of Tobit, there were Northern Kingdom Israelites who had already freed themselves, and they had come up in the society of the Assyrians. Okay, but the point being is that when the Babylonians came and conquered the Assyrians, the Israelites that were captive in Assyria and also free, they decided to take a different approach to how they were going to continue to live. It tells us in the book of 2nd Ezra 13 and 40 that the 10 tribes, or the northern kingdom of Israel, the Latinos and Native Americans, they decided to try something new, to go into a further country where no man had dwelt before. And these records were amongst our people, because in the time of King Solomon and King David, they had employed the Hamites as their navy, right? Basically merchants that would go around the world and gather merchandise and bring it back. Well, we know that the Hamites would take 3 years to go to the Americas. They refer to it as Ophir, right? It would take them 3 years, a year and a half of the Americas, or the land of Ophir, and then a year and a half back. In 2nd Ezra 13 and 40, it tells us that the Israelites took a year and a half journey to reach this unknown land known as Azareth. Now, that could only be the Americas. So, back to the creation of the Mayan Empire. Okay, so when the Israelites had landed on the Americas circa 600 BC, they started to build up and develop here in the Americas. Now, due to the lack of large beasts of burdens like horses, and also the lack of higher end civilization technology, the empires that were built weren't as advanced as they were in the Eastern Hemisphere. And eventually, from the records that supposedly track the history of what happened here in the Americas, which you can find in the Book of Mormon. Remember, the Book of Mormon is not biblical doctrine, okay, Akim? It is not biblical doctrine. What it holds is the supposed historic events of the Latinos and while they were here in the Americas, before they were found by the Europeans, okay? And in those records found within the Book of Mormon, it basically tells us that we devolved into a Lord of the Flies sort of state. We started to war against each other and kill each other off, and that's because we had the curses on us. The Lord had punished us, and it didn't matter, that we were the Israelites. We still had to pay for going off, and that's why the Lord eventually brought the They brought the Europeans against us, right? And this ultimately started the captivity and the conquest of the Northern Kingdom by the Europeans, okay? Now, that being said, like the man in the beginning of the video said, the people who descend from the Mayan, and really it's all the Latinos, right? The Native American Indians, they all descend from this particular DNA chain. Now, you got to take that with a grain of salt, because though they can track DNA, markers, the records of where these DNA markers lead back to, that's the false narrative, okay? They don't keep proper records, and they don't account for migration patterns. But because the tribe of Zebulon, which when you get into who the tribe of Zebulon is, right, the people who come from Zebulon today, like I said, would be basically the Central Americans, right? And they come from Leah, right, who was Jacob's first wife. It's the same mother who Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulon come from, okay? So these people, they'll tend to have more similar DNA traits than the other tribes, right? and vice versa. So this is why you can't really use DNA as a definitive answer, but it helps to give hints of who people are. Okay, but notice, like it said, the Mayan descendants have Middle Eastern DNA, and why is that? Well, that's because the Central Americans, they are the Israelites, okay, namely of the tribe of Zebulon. And how do we know that? How do we know that the Central Americans are the tribe of Zebulon? Well, you see, when Jacob, our forefather, the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, his 12 sons, before he died, he gave a prophecy to each one of the sons of what their descendants would be doing in the end days, okay, before the second coming of the Messiah. And you could read about Zebulon here. This is Genesis 20 and 30. Or actually, let's read this real quick. This is the birth of Zebulon, how he came into the world, right? This is, it says Genesis 30 and 20. And Leah said, God hath endured me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulon. And that right there just shows that Zebulon was the youngest of Leah's 6 sons. And with this, she was happy because she was able to give our forefather many sons. Okay, but on to Simeon's blessing from our forefather, Zebulon's father, Jacob. His prophecy is right here in Genesis 49 and 13. Zebulon shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. So, what is that talking about? Well, Zebulon, if you're unfamiliar, it's one of the more popular ports for seafaring and for ships crossing from the Atlantic Ocean into the Pacific Ocean, right? Or the Caribbean Sea, but coming from the Atlantic Ocean. And that's mainly because of the Panama Canal, which is down here, okay? And this is why it says it's a haven of ships, because when you understand the Central America layout, this area is very highly trafficked by ships, commercial, personal, cruise lines, right? This is a very secure place, for ship faring, okay? And that's because a lot, like I said, has to do with the Panama Canal and all the traffic that goes here. This way, ships no longer have to go around the southern tip of South America. Now, like I said, the tribe of Zebulon would make up these people from the El Salvadorians, the Guatemalans, the Belize, Honduras, Nicaraguans, Panamanians, right? And Costa Ricans. So all these people, right? Because these are the people who dwelt there in the Mayan Empire. The Mayan Empire was up here, right? But these people is mostly where the Mayan Empire went. And then the Mexicans, who are the tribe of Issachar, they went up north and they went on to create the Aztec Empire, okay? And again, remember, all the 10 tribes that came over here, we were all together at once. And then it shows that we had started to split apart, okay? We started to go away from each other once those wars started to break out. Now, let's go and read some historic documents that prove that the Israelites, the Latinos, or the native Indians are the Israelites. Well, this book here is a very famous book regarding the Mayans' connections to the lost Israelites. Okay, it's called the Annals of the Tequals, right? And also it's the title of the Lords of Tetonicapán. So on this page, on this book, it talks about a lot of similarities to the Mayan people, or basically the native Indian people, and also the biblical Israelites. And in this case here, it talks about how they are descendants or they have stories of basically Moses, who they refer to as Balaam Kitza, right? But let's go and just read it, and you'll see for yourself, right? This is from page 170 from this book, right? It says these then were the three nations of the Kichas, Mayans, Kueks, great houses of the Lord Kichas, and they came from where the sun rises, the east, descendants of Israel, of the same language and the same customs. When they arrived at the edge of the Red Sea, Balaam Kitza, who is Moses, a native title for one in a religious office, touched it with his staff, and at once a path opened, which then closed up again. For thus the great God wished it to be done, because they were the sons of Abraham and Jacob. So it was that those three nations passed through, and with them 13 others called Volcamag. We have written that which by tradition our ancestors told us, who came from the other part of the sea, who came from Sivan Tolan, bordering Babylonia. So you see that, Akim? This is the records that the native Indians had given to the friars and the missionaries who came and asked them who they were. Okay, they told them that, they basically told them their story, their ancient, story of their forefathers and how they had parted a sea. We know this as the Red Sea. Okay, so that being said, this also is a depiction of a tile that was found around the Central American peninsula. I forgot what it was called, but it's famous because it depicts, actually here it goes, here's a better picture of it. It depicts, let me see, this is what it says. It says, Mayan bas relief discovered at Tikal, Guatemala by Harvard archaeologist Teobert Mailer. Now this relief has been lost, apparently, right? But this tells the story of the great flood of Noah and how the people were destroyed. Okay, that's what this is talking about. Okay, now these devils obviously would have wanted to hide this because they are trying really hard to hide the truth that the Latinos and Native Americans, that we are the Israelites. Another example, right, comes from Friar Diego de Landa. It says, from 1566 AD, it says, in his book mentioned above, Friar Diego de Landa talks about the practice of baptism amongst the Maya before the conquest. The Maya prophecies for the arrival of a foreign power who would impose a single god on their people. The teachings of the Maya elders, who taught that their ancestors who inhabited this land had come from the east, that God had helped them, opening two roads across the sea. Now this ultimately here is talking about, the first road being the Red Sea that Moses parted, and the other road is the Atlantic Ocean, basically when we came over here, right, which is depicted in 2nd Ezra 13 and 40. Now another thing here, the Maya prophecy that there would become an arrival of a foreign power. This is talking about when the Lord comes back. And when the Lord comes back, he's going to get rid of all the idols, and he's going to get rid of all the false worship. And it's only going to be one God that we worship, and that's going to be Yahweh. Okay? And his only begotten son, Yahweh Shai. And then below that's going to be our King David. And below that's going to be our elders. And then you got the Israelites. Okay? But this here shows you, these are historic testimonies proving that the tribe of Zebulun are today the Salvadorians, the Hondurans, the Nicaraguans, the Panamanians, the Costa Ricans, the Guatemalans, and the Belizeans. Okay? So, that being said, let's go and read this. This is Baruch 2:30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. So there you go, Akim. This is the time of us to awake, right? It's now time for us to come back to our true heritage of who we are, right? To put together all the puzzle pieces that never made sense because the people that were set up to lead us turned out to be devils that were put there to deceive us. But now the truth is coming out. The Lord has put it on the spirits of our elders to bring out this truth, and that has started a big domino effect which is going to cause our people to wake up. So either way, hopefully this video was edifying. Until next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Ruach Kodesh. Shalom.